Welcome back to the channel. We're back with our Spider-Man Commander with Kraven, the Hunter. For 1, a black and a green, you get a forgery with Trample, where whenever a creature an opponent controls with the greatest power among creatures that player controls dies, draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on Kraven the Hunter. So we have plenty of ways to benefit from some +1/+1 counters, so that Kraven could trample in for some commander damage. A lot of ways to make sure we're removing our opponent's biggest creature in order to get that draw power and those +1/+1 counters in the first place. Some ways to double those up while we're at it as well. A lot of removal, a lot of fun stuff going into this deck. That's just the general overview of it though. Let's get into it card by card. Starting us off, we have Basilisk Collar for Death Touch Lifelink. Kraven's going to be getting pretty big himself and having Trample. Death Touch helps us out with that, dealing 1 damage to the creature he needs to destroy, and then the rest to our opponent. Lifelink also helps us a little bit there, and also helps us just get rid of our opponent's biggest creature if they only have the one to block with, or the one to swing on us with. Lightning Grease, we want to make sure Kraven stays protected. Giving him Shroud will help us get to that point in the first place, and sometimes we just need the 4 damage to finish off our opponent. So we give him haste and have him swing on our opponent. Helps us out there as well. Mithril Coat, once again, we want to make sure Kraven stays on the board. This way he keeps us +1/+1 counters, keeps our draw power going to make sure we could swing in for a bunch of damage. Ozlek the Shattered Spire, whenever you get a +1/+1 counter, get an additional +1/+1 counter. With this deck, we don't necessarily care about the ones that double the amount of +1/+1 counters, because they're only doing 1 at a time anyway, so getting that additional 1 each time helps us out. And then we'll have 2. We don't get to draw 2 cards, but still, getting 2 counters is helpful for us. Shadow Spear, equip creatures +1/+1 is Trample and Lifelink. Giving some of our other creatures Trample is helpful, Lifelink's helpful as well, but the main ability we're looking for this one is permanent to your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible. A lot of times our opponent's biggest creature sticks around because it's either hexproof or indestructible, so this helps us get around just that. Well, then, the lifelink if we need the life. Soul Ring for a little bit of additional mana, because how could you not? Swiftfoot Boots, same as Lightning Greaves. Tarian Soul Cleaver, whenever another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on the equipped creature and it also gets Vigilance. Helps us make sure that Kraven doesn't put his shields down when he does end up attacking in, so he keeps that Vigilance, keeps on protecting us, along with getting some additional +1/+1 counters. Terragrid, God of Fright, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token creature, which in the stack, like I said, there's a lot of cards that say each opponent sacrifices the strongest creature among creatures they control, or whenever they discard a card, that card from the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So not only are we getting rid of their best thing, we're also getting their best thing. The Masamune, whenever you get an ability of when a creature dies, you get that ability at initial time, getting some additional +1/+1 counters and some additional cards to draw. So, we like both of those things, let's do both those things. Also makes it so they have to block Kraven. Sometimes if their strongest creature is their only creature, that's more +1/+1 counters onto Kraven. And then the Ozlith, because they will eventually get rid of Kraven, so we want to make sure we could keep those counters around so that we could swing in with him for some big damage following that. For our creatures, we have Birds of Paradise for a little bit of mana there. Shovel, Bane of Monsters, that touch at the beginning of your upkeep. If your opponent controls no permanents with bounty counters on them, put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker that player controls, aka probably the strongest creature. And whenever a permanent an opponent controls with a bounty counter on it dies, gain 3 life and draw a card. Double that up with the Masamune. Draw 2 cards with this plus Kraven. Draw 4 if you have these 2 plus the Masamune. Really good ability there for this deck. And also just that touch sometimes helps remove their biggest creature. Drivnod, Carnage Dominus, another way to make sure that we can double up Kraven's ability, double up Shovel's ability, double up some other abilities we may have in this deck, so that we could draw some additional cards, double up on that ability. Elves of Deep Shadow, another mana dork here, because we're in green, we need some mana to get some of our bigger spells we'll get into later. Glissa, Sunslayer, First Strike, Death Touch, another way to get rid of our opponent's best thing. First Strike, Death Touch makes it so that they never really want to attack you. And then whenever Glissa deals combat damage to a player, choose one, draw a card, lose a life, destroy target enchantment, or move up to 3 counters from target permanent. We could get rid of some enchantments and draw some cards, but it's really just that first strike that touch we're looking for with this one. Comedy to Whispered Hopes, another way to get some additional +1/+1 counters onto Kraven, getting him even bigger in order to make sure we're getting plenty of damage on our opponent. You also get a lot of mana off this at a certain point in the game. You don't really have that many ways to put like +1/+1 counters on this card, but say if like Kraven gets removed and we have the Ozolith, put him onto Kami, get that much mana. Llanowar Elves for another mana dork. Morbid Opportunist, some more draw power anytime creatures die. We're removing our opponent's stuff left and right, we may as well draw stuff right and left. Opposition Agent stops our opponent from searching their deck, essentially. We get their stuff instead. Helpful here for this deck in order to make sure they can't get their big combo pieces off. Because that's sometimes what this deck loses to is like big combo decks, because you're trying to remove like just their creatures and you have a lot of creature removal. Not a lot to stop, Laboratory Maniacs. Well, no, Laboratory Maniacs is the creature. Extra turn spells, there you go. Orcish Bowmasters, we're drawing a lot of cards. Our opponents are drawing a lot of cards. We don't really get the benefit when we draw cards, but we are drawing a lot of cards. It's just a fact. But yeah, since our opponent's drawing a lot of cards, we may as well deal some damage to them for that and get some additional orcs while we're at it. And also, sometimes just removes their mana dorks, which sometimes could be their biggest creature. Plaguecrafter, a way to make sure each opponent has to sacrifice a creature. You could also run a Fleshbag Marauder, Curse Marauder, all the Marauders in this deck if you really wanted to. This is just an example of like something you could run though. But yeah, this is super helpful there as well. Poison Tip Archer, whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses a life. We have ways to make sure that everyone's losing a creature basically every turn. So we get those abilities off with Kraven. So it's like Draven. I'm just like, this isn't League of Legends. They have their own card game now. But yeah, remove a creature on every person's board. That's 12 damage. Sorry. Well, no. It's 4 damage. I don't know why I'm saying 12. Shieldred, Whispering One. Since we are removing our opponent's best stuff, may as well take it for our own. And then Vraska, the Silencer. Another creature with Death Touch. Whenever another non-token creature an opponent controls dies, pay 1, return it to your battlefield tapped. Another way to make sure we're getting our opponent's best stuff, because someone's got to use it if they're not. On to the second half of the deck, which is a lot of removal, as you may see. We start off with Black Market. We're destroying a lot of creatures. That means a lot of charge counters on Black Market, which means a lot of mana, which means even more stuff to beat up our opponents with. Black Market Connections, some draw power, some treasure tokens, some shapeshifters. All the stuff that we like to see, really just the first two. Eternal Thirst, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. You're going to put that onto Kraven so he gets even bigger. Anytime a creature dies, getting 2, maybe 4, maybe 6, depending on how you're doing things. Hardened Scales, another way to get some additional +1/+1 counters anytime you get those +1/+1 counters, because you're doing one at a time, so we don't necessarily care about doubling, because this basically doubles for us already. Sadistically, whenever a creature is put into any graveyard from play, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. So, we're putting plenty of stuff into their graveyards, may as well get those counters while we're at it. Then Terra Symbiosis, a card I've definitely thought about removing from this deck, but a little bit of draw power it gives you is nice. We tend to only get like 1 or 2 counters on Kraven at a time, because like even if you do remove a creature on every person's board, that is 3 separate instances of 1 counter, but still, a little bit of draw power definitely helps out. For our instance, we have Assassin's Trophy for removal. You also give them a basic land. Beast Within for removal, sometimes giving them a new biggest creature. This way you can then remove that as well. Biosynthetic Burst, good form of protection for Kraven, giving him indestructible, reach, trample. We don't have really any flyers in this deck other than Birds of Paradise, so we want to make sure we could not get done in by birds. So that wouldn't be Ultimate Hunter of us. Dark Ritual for some additional mana. Flare of Malice. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value, which will normally be the strongest creature they control as well. So that helps us out, proceeding our game plan even further. Go for the destroy target non-artifact creature. Not going to be ours, going to be our opponent's, and helps us remove the biggest thing on the board. Heroic Intervention, another source of protection there for Kraven. Make sure you can stick around with those +1/+1 counters. Infernal Grasp, another way to destroy our opponent's biggest thing. Putrefy, another way. Ram Drew, another way to make sure Kraven can fight something. He wants to make sure he hunts. He doesn't just want the goat sitting there waiting for the T-Rex. And also this way, when he destroys that creature, we get to deal some damage to our opponent's face as well. Shieldred's Edict, making so everyone sacrifices a creature, well, each opponent sacrifices a creature, you don't. Which could sometimes be their biggest creature, sometimes it's not. Even if it's just like 1 or 2 people who only have that one creature to sacrifice, you still get that draw power off of Kraven. Snakeskin Veil, for some more protection for Kraven, along with some +1/+1 counters while we're here. Soul Shatter, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with highest mana value, normally the strongest creature, helps Kraven get his stats up. Sazad's Will, choose one, each opponent sacrifices a creature they control with the greatest power. I'm pretty sure that's what we're choosing. Or exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards, create X01 black draw creature tokens where X is the greatest mana value among cards exiled this way. I don't really care about that. Tamiyo's Safekeeping, another form of protection for Kraven. Tragic Slip for more removal. Tyvar's Stand, more protection. Windgrace's Judgment, for any number of opponents, destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. aka that'll be each opponent losing their biggest creature. And Withering Torment for more removal. We also have Feldal Profane for more removal. Dark Shore Pathways, a double land. Boseiju doesn't do anything. Just making sure that we... Oh, and Revitalizing Reaper. I knew I was missing one. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control and get some protection on them. Blasphemous Edict, making so everyone's sacrificing all their creatures essentially. Maybe we have some ways to benefit off that if Kraven sticks around. If not, we put his counters onto the Ozlith. Casualties of War, choose one or more, aka choose all of them. Destroy target one of everything essentially. Not battles, you don't get to destroy a battle. Cultivate for more mana. Extract a Confession. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. Evidence was collected. Instead, with each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. Not hard for us to collect that evidence. We'll be able to get that out of our graveyard. Farseek for some more mana. Gix's Command. Each opponent sacrifices a creature with the highest power. That means 3 +1/+1 counters and 3 cards that we're drawing. Make an example. Each opponent separates their creatures into 2 piles. Each opponent choose one of the piles. Each opponent sacrifices the creatures in the chosen pile. Normally, you're going to make them sacrifice their stuff with the biggest stuff in order to get the most out of it. Nature's Lore for some more mana. Rampant Growth for some more mana. Reanimate. We're getting rid of our opponent's best things. We may as well take their best things. Rise. You could also run March of the Dread Hordes or whatever it's called. Rise of the Witch King. Each player sacrifices a creature. Maybe the biggest thing. Doesn't necessarily have to be. If you sacrifice a creature this way, return another permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. Nice to see. Drury Visits for some more mana, and then Will of the Abzan. Any number of target opponents, each sacrifice a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control, and you lose 3 life. But that's worth it because we get to draw 3 cards. But that's a super fun deck here. I'm actually really excited for Kraven. Yeah, probably my favorite member to Sinister Six out of like the Commander so far, or just like really like, I don't know, I liked his design in the cartoon when I was a kid. But thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If there's any other Spider-Man commanders we haven't covered yet, you want to see covered, leave it down there in the comment section, and we'll do our best to get to it. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a great day.